I am Joni with Looking at Careers with Joni, and I'm here today with John. John has a real interesting background, and he's proven that with some hard work and good resources, you could make major changes in your career and really go far. So, John, why don't we start at the beginning? And when you were in college, what did you think you were going to do with your life?
So when I was in college, when I was, and even now, but especially when I was younger, I loved math. I loved working on interesting problems to solve. And so when I went to college, I studied finance. My original thought was I was going to be a trader. And so I loved analyzing investments and working on math and doing things like that. So I lived in New York City at the time, and I finished my finance degree and I started interviewing on Wall Street. And I started getting offered some positions on Wall Street, which was exciting and it was great. But I immediately ran into a major challenge, which was that I really didn't like the culture that I was walking into. And so I can specifically remember coming out of school and being at an interview at a very large investment bank. And in as I walked through the hall to get to the interview, I remember looking at all the traders at their desks, and I remember thinking they all look so stressed, so just kind of burdened. And I thought, wow, like this is not really what I expected. I went through the interview. The interview went great. I got offered the role, but I actually declined the role. I declined the role, and I walked out of the bank, and I realized I had basically, without kind of thinking about it, had really just shifted my whole life in a different direction. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. So my original thought was I was going to be a trader, but then I decided that that wasn't the right thing. So I had to kind of reinvent myself from there.
Oh, wow. And so what did you do? You weren't going to be a trader
I wasn't going to be
and
traders. Yeah.
mhm,
So I studied. Now I was always interested in business and entrepreneurship and kind of I love to figure things out. I realize it's kind of like one of the common threads in my life is this pattern of trying to understand how to solve different types of problems. And I've always had a passion for that. So I had a passion for business and learning. And so I was a musician. I was a lifelong musician, and I was in New York City, which was really a kind of a big hot spot at that time. It still is, right? But obviously the music
right.
industry has changed. But I thought, hey, I'm in a great location. Why don't I start a business somehow, in this, and let me just see how it goes. And I had some money that I had saved up, and so I started an independent record label at that time with a partner, and basically we built a really small record label and basically worked with bands and went through and kind of own the whole end-to-end process, which was the manufacturing, the distribution, the marketing, the selling, and all that. And that was my first real indoctrination into the business world. And so it was a complete left turn from what I had
I
done.
guess so.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it was. But the thing that was interesting was it took me a long time to see it. And I think I had to kind of go through my career further, but it was kind of the beginning of a thread that started to connect a lot of different things. And I think that's one of the things that I had to learn, as somebody that was out in the professional world is, you know, every plan that you have is not going to work out, but that doesn't mean you're not still going in the right direction. And so that was something that I was beginning to learn at that early stage.
Wow. Wonderful. I have a question because I know you've gone into the business side, but are you still doing things with music?
Yeah, here and there. I mean, I think it's now it's certainly in the what I would call a hobby here and there, and I've actually just started to learn a new a new instrument, which is the lap steel guitar, which I literally have
Oh,
no idea how to play. And so, but I think I do. Again, this part of this is hindsight. I think one of the things I've subconsciously always done is try to make myself a beginner again in some
mhm.
respects. So and I think that's where a lot of the opportunities for me have come from is not always just staying on the same path, but kind of going left or right and saying, what about this? What about that? And trying to discover something new.
Interesting. So you were in a band and you had a record label, and I'm going to assume you weren't making enough money to support yourself.
That's
And
right.
so you knew you had to do something different. So what
hmm
was going through your head then?
So what was interesting was as part of running the record label. So I still had a job, right? So I was kind of doing both things. But one of the things that I had to figure out running the record label was the technology piece because we had a website. And so rather than outsource it to somebody else, I taught myself web development. And that skill got me a role being basically a web developer for a services firm in New York City. And so I used that skill to jump into this other area. And then, so that got me into tech. So that was really my first official role in technology. And that this is, quite a while ago, but that was actually how I got into it. It was a very interesting so I kept learning all these things. And what I found was that, like, in college, I learned this kind of big basket of things. And from that, one or two things came out that led me to the next thing. Then a whole nother kind of ecosystem, if you will, of skills. And I kind of pulled something from that. So that's what got me into tech from there. Yeah.
Okay. But when you were doing that, so that was at the beginning of
Hmm.
the web, right?
Yeah, that
So were
was.
there classes online that were showing you how to do web development?
There at that time, I don't remember ever seeing a class online for that. But what there was, or if there were classes, there weren't a lot of them at that time. But
Right.
what there were was good books. There were good books out in the bookstore, and so I used to spend, and even to this day, I still do. I spent a lot of time kind of going through the bookstore, looking at what was there, testing different ideas and approaches, looking for ways to answer the questions that I had about how to do things. And what I realized was, when you're learning something new, I think we all have this initial reaction of being intimidated by it. It's a big thing, right? Oh my gosh,
Right.
how could I get from where I am today to where I want to be tomorrow? But I think
Mhm.
if we can break it down into smaller pieces, it gets a lot easier. So that's what I did. So basically back then, it was start with HTML, learn HTML first, then learn CSS, then learn PHP. And so you kind of, that's the web stack, if you will. I
Mhm.
haven't done this in a while, so I'm not sure what people are. It's probably all different now. But basically,
Sure.
those are the key ingredients then, and
Uh-huh.
um, and that's what I began to just step my way through. And what I found was, if you could actually start to create and make stuff step by step, you would
Mhm.
eventually get to the big thing. You didn't have to wait for it. I think sometimes that's what gets in our heads, is it feels like it's so far away. How am I ever going to get there? But if you break
Right.
it down, you can definitely find a path forward.
Right. And that's true. So you learned how to develop web pages or websites.
Yep.
And how did you get customers for that?
Well, actually, I was working for a professional services firm at the time. It was a law firm I was working for in New York City, and running and developing their website, which was great. And then I remember it was probably around it was 1999, I remember. So there, for people that are newer to business, there was this thing that was called Y2K, that where we thought the whole world was going to shut down. And I
Right.
remember, so I was on the IT team. So at that time, web development was in the IT team. And I remember one of the partners at the firm brought the whole IT organization into a conference room and said, hey, everybody, we think that, there's this thing called Y2K that's going to happen, and it's going to be completely disruptive. And we need to bring in a new piece of technology that we're going to use to help us manage all this work that's going to come in for our firm.
Right.
And one of the elements is this really complex database system from Oracle, and we're going to need somebody to learn how to use Oracle. Who wants to get trained as a database administrator on Oracle? So I was in the back of the room, and I was looking around, and nobody was raising their hand. So I raised my hand. I said, I'll learn it, and that got me. So then I went from that. I became a database administrator in addition to the web piece, and they sent me for training. I learned how to do it. It was, it was a really interesting experience, very complex system, but again,
Yeah.
it was another kind of chapter. So I kind of
Yeah.
layered that on. So now I was fully immersed in the technology, and I did that. Um, I did that for a while, and then actually you called me. You actually called me. You called me.
Because I was
Um,
a headhunter.
yeah, you
Yeah.
actually called me, and I can still remember I was sitting. That was the firm I was at when you called, and by that point I was doing some other stuff around electronic evidence management. My kind of purview had continued to expand, and I remember when you called, and so you said, "Hey, you're like, I've got something that you might be interested in," and it was one of the best opportunities I ever had, and I happened. It was the right time and the right role, and it turned out great. So thank you for that. That was actually a career changing and life changing moment for
That's
me.
great. And I hope I gave you good advice at the time.
You sure did.
Okay, so you go into a law firm, you change your industry a little bit too, because now
Hmm.
you're not doing web development, you're doing database development,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep. So then it
And
went,
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead. And how did you learn that? So do they
So
just
it went
throw
from
you in?
database development, had to learn all of it. Yeah. They throw you in, they send you for training and they go, here you go. And
Yeah.
basically off that, and then from that, now the thing was I was learning how to solve, I was learning how to solve a lot of difficult problems, and my problem solving skills were getting better and better at that time, which led me into what was then called, I think it still is actually, it's called electronic discovery, which is basically electronic evidence management to support investigations in both the public and private sectors. So I got, so the database piece led into data analysis and data management, and that became a really kind of a key element of my career there. So then I became a project manager, and this was the role that you helped me to get. That project manager role, I'd say it literally just kept kind of stepping through. I went from that, then I became a computer forensics engineer for about 2 to 3 years. Then I began managing a team of consultants. Then I became a director. And so it all just kind of built and built and built over time. But every one of those steps required some amount of reinvention for me.
Yeah. And John, I haven't even thought about this in a long time, but when you first jumped into that industry, there weren't a lot of books on it. But at that time, your coworkers helped train you. So everybody wanted you to succeed and
Mm-hmm.
kind of jumped in and showed you the next steps to move forward. And I don't know if it's like that as much anymore.
Yeah, I think that part of it, so it's an interesting observation. I think today there are certainly more self-study type tools and platforms that people can work with, and I use them myself today.
Uh-huh.
What I think what I think is important though is I think we all need a mentor or coach, or
Right.
plural mentors or coaches along the way, even if those people help us for a limited period of time. I think
Right.
we all need that. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're right. At that time, I would step in for, not for all the roles, but for some of them, and work with somebody who really knew the ropes, right? Who
Right.
understood how to do the work and the dynamics and how to navigate. And but I do think that but I don't think it was exclusively dependent on them. And I think,
Right.
I think our mentors and our coaches can point us the right way, and they can help
Mm-hmm.
us hopefully not bump into the walls too much. But there's
Right.
some bumping into the walls that has to happen in order for
Of
the learning
course.
to
Yeah.
really occur, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. But I think there's a lesson here that it's good to help other people too, because that helps you move ahead.
It does. And I think especially if you are working in an organization that uh, is growing, right? Or has aspirations to grow, you have to always ask yourself as a leader, what can I do to help us scale this business, right? It can't all depend on any one of us. And so even today, I do a lot of mentoring and coaching in my own company that I work at today, and do whatever I can to go outward and push out
Mm-hmm.
the things that I've learned and ways of thinking. And I don't have all the answers, but I have some of them, and I'm always looking for ways to share those with other folks.
That's wonderful. So you were in the legal industry for, I don't know, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you decided you needed a change.
Hmm.
So how did you know what you wanted to do next?
So what I actually liked the work that I did, but I wanted to change kind of the playing field that it was on. I liked technology. I liked being able to combine the creativity and the business piece together, and use technology as a platform to create some kind of value. But I felt that there were other opportunities that were more interesting for me personally. And so now by this point, I had spent quite a bit of time in and around investigations. Again, as I mentioned, I was a computer forensics engineer. I'd done some things that I really kind of resonated with me, but I wanted to expand the playing field I was on. And I started to get really interested in cybersecurity and looking at what was happening. And I was kind of fascinated by the stories I was reading of what was happening out in the world. And I started to think, hey, maybe I could kind of apply my own skills to this. I was, so my last company it got purchased. It was purchased, the company got purchased. And then and so by this point, I was a vice president at the company. The whole team, the whole management team was let go as part of that acquisition. And
Mhm.
so I actually now I had been I've always been preparing for the next thing. That's another kind of element I think that I wanted to share here is, I'm whatever role I'm in that role, but I'm always building around it because you
Right,
really never know where you're going to end up next. And so, and that's just, and I love doing that. I love learning and just kind of expanding. But
right.
I, when I was let go with the rest of the team after that acquisition, I knew I had a golden opportunity. I didn't see it as a bad thing at all. I saw it as this is my next reinvention that's about to happen, and I was really I was spot on with that because I was able to take all those skills that I had accumulated all those years ago, and basically roll them all up together and kind of take the next big step, which was really leading overall product strategy and product management for a very large tech company. So I made a complete shift over a period of years.
That's great. That's great. And is that where you are now?
It is, yeah, yeah. I work at a company called Help Systems here, based in Minnesota, but it's got 30 offices worldwide. We've got 30,000 customers. It's about 3,000 employees now. I mean, it's really it's kind of amazing to have seen like the evolution of all of this over time, and
Mhm.
and it's awesome, and and I get to work with really smart, creative people every day, and we challenge each other. It's I like being able to share, to your earlier question, what I have
Mhm.
experienced and learned. Again, I don't have all the answers, but to help get people to think differently and kind of reframe their thinking and to get them to see like, hey, there's a lot of possibility with where when you're not stuck in a box anymore. You don't
Right.
have to be. And so how do always question and challenge and try to evolve and push things forward wherever you can.
Yeah. And I think it's important, like where you are now. Let's talk about your company's always hiring, and I would guess, and you don't always hire people that have done that job before. So you're looking for people. What kind of skills do you look for? What do you look for in a person when you're bringing on a new person that doesn't really fit the job description?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this is something that we are very focused on, which is we recognize that especially in technology, the technology landscape, if you will, is so dynamic. There's so many different things a person can focus on that it might be hard to find a one-to-one match, right, on a skill
Mm-hmm.
set. And so what we try to differentiate between is what can they bring to the table as a person, right? Leadership, personality, empathy, passion, things like that, and what can we train them on? And so we will always hire for the more human aspects first and the skills second, because skills we can train on. Skills are
Right.
much easier to train on. What we can't do and what we don't want to do or try to do is change the person, right? And so we spend a lot of time on the actual human part of it. Is this person a good fit for our organization culturally? Will they work well with others? Can they lead by influence? What will happen when they're under stress? How will they react to that? Those are all things that are in some respects part of the person. We don't want to change anybody. We want to enhance all the good stuff. But if a person, and so for example, I just hired a senior director on my team. Is a very senior role. This is a person that actually doesn't have specific product strategy and technology hands-on experience, but is an incredible leader, right? And is
Right.
inspiring. And so we
Right.
can we can we can backfill those other skills in and accentuate what this person already does well.
Yeah. It makes me wonder for people that are out interviewing and looking for jobs right now, and they go into a job interview and the hiring manager is looking for somebody that fits the job description. If an interviewee could convince that hiring manager that you could train me on those specific skills, but I have all these other things that could make your company a better company. Do you think that people can convince hiring managers to do that, or do you think it just is going to kind of depend?
So I think it depends on the relationship a candidate has with the hiring team. And I think, this is something else that we see too. So today Help Systems has well over 100 open roles across a variety of areas. I mean, we are looking for good people. It's hard to find good people.
Right.
Um, one of the challenges that we have is when we post a role, and I can understand it from the job seeker's perspective as well. They're looking for an opportunity. We get a lot of mismatches on applicants versus what we're looking for. And I think, and it's not just on skill set, but it just, there seems to be a divergence there. And what I would encourage people to do is to not look at, so instead of thinking of it as a math equation where you're kind of just getting as many resumes or applications out, it would probably be more effective to build a smaller number of key relationships with organizations so that when an opportunity does come up, they know who you are, they know a little bit about you. That's, we're always interested, obviously we see a lot of different applicants for different roles, but
Sure.
wherever there's a personal relationship and we know the person a bit, it does create a bond there. And you do want to help people to find roles wherever you can. So I would encourage people to, wherever they can, do a lot of networking. Even today I
Yeah.
network. I'm it's so important to put a personal face to it. There's so many resumes out there. After they do, a lot of them do look alike, but what doesn't look
Mhm.
alike is when you're sitting with somebody, having a coffee and getting to know each other. That's what's going to stand out. So I would encourage people to really invest in that as well.
That's really a good advice. And just to kind of wrap things up, I think that if you're out there and you're looking to make a change, there are a few really important things. And one is to research as much as you can and to learn with online classes and books and kind of go for what interests you, because probably what interests you is what you're going to be good at. And then to get out there and talk to as many people as you can, because talking to people is really going to throw you into the right position, because through people are more people and you'd never know who you're going to meet.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the role that I have, me arriving at my current company was the
Mhm.
result of me raising my hand to be on a product management panel in Minneapolis that I just wanted to be a part of and meet some people. And one of the people I met there introduced me to the former CEO of my current company, and that's how I ended up here. So, and they had
Yeah.
never posted my role. My role was never posted.
Isn't that something? It's funny how
Yep.
things work.
Yep.
John, I appreciate your time today, and I know that you're busy and got a lot of other things going on. So I'm going to end it here, and maybe we'll see you on here again sometime. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Joni.
Okay, bye-bye. And
Bye.
I'm Joni with Looking at Careers with Joni. If you like this interview, please press like below and subscribe to this channel. Bye-bye.